we doing, chat? How we doing? Let's see. We gotta start putting out the link here in a minute. Giving out the link. Sharing this. Testing. Oh, it sounds so quiet. Testing, testing. Quiet, quiet, quiet. Quiet, quiet. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Is we up too high?
Oh, is that why you wait? Like, oh, I think the vape store right up there. No, didn't know.
All right, we is not up too high. Maybe we are, just a little bit. All right, we is not up too high. Testing. Testing. All right. We good. We good. We good. We good. Welcome. This is Truth of the World. Oh my God. We're gonna just be watching shit and giving our
with you and just tell you this video is going to get very weird. I swear to God, the topic is like 14 different things strung together in a way that I'm not sure if I'm saying something really profound or if I'm saying something so completely obvious that I'm going to get the obvious police called to my house. I'm going to tell you about my completely insane schizo theory about the underlying principle that holds society together. A theory that I think becomes kind of obvious in retrospect and which you could kind of use to achieve world domination if you really wanted to. How does that sound? Cool? Troubling? Vaguely implausible? Tell me about it. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight in.
We can multitask and like give our opinion though and play Pokemon. Trust. You paying attention. Rejuvenation.
Okay, so everyone's always desperate to tell you about how they think society should run. Every politician, every online pundit, every propaganda outlet masquerading as a news source, every one of those fucking creepy dudes at work that never shut the fuck up, every social media page, every homeless person on the street screaming random bullshit. All of them are all like, oh, I know what society's problem is. It's because the Jews run the media. It's all the deep state. It's the tech bro billionaires. It's the far right. It's the military industrial complex. It's the wrong. You're all wrong. Okay, to begin, I need you to answer one simple question. What is society? What is society? What the fuck is it? Let me give you my answer. Society, human civilization in general, is a system. Okay, nice work, jackass, but that's not very specific, is it? The reason it seems unspecific is that no one seems to know what the fuck a system even is. So here's what a system is. A system is a collection of parts coordinated in such a way that achieve a goal. You build a system, it's made of things, you get an outcome. If it's a good system, the outcome is the same as the goal that you designed it with. If it's a shitty system, it gives you a different outcome, an outcome you didn't want. If you're trying to design a system, you can maybe make a diagram like this. You specify the requirement of the system, then you specify the broad strokes of how the system is going to work and all the little subsystems that it needs within it. Then you need to work out how those subsystems work and if there's subsystems inside of them. And then you go all the way down to designing every single subsystem within the entire system. Then you test all of those subsystems to see if they work. If they do, then you move up to the higher level systems to test those too. If they don't, you move back to designing that specific system and then go back around the things that would be affected by the redesign of that system to make sure they also work. And at the end, you have a system that does what it's actually meant to do. My problem with the way that people talk about society and politics isn't that the suggestions they're making aren't worth talking about. They totally are. My problem is that even when we're having seemingly very big conversations about how the economy should work or whether AI is going to take all of our jobs or whatever it is, in my opinion, we still have a massive tendency to leave out the most important factor in this entire discussion. The most important part of what this entire conversation should be, which is what the fuck is this entire system meant to be doing? What's the intended outcome outcome for human civilization? What's the entire point of what we're doing? Now we can ask that question and it immediately gets messy, because the intention is ultimately the thing that we want, but the thing we want apparently differs quite a lot, right? Not everyone claims to want the same thing. Does society functioning perfectly look like maximizing well-being? Does it look like maximizing freedom? Does it look like everyone being as close to God as possible? Like, what the fuck does it look like? Does it look like the world joining together in unity? Does it look like culturally distinct tribes? Does it look like technology getting better? Does it look like technology disappearing? People have different answers for this question. There's no wonder we disagree on what different parts this system should have if we can't even agree on what the system's meant to be doing. Like, if two engineers were working together to collaboratively design the same machine, and one of them wants it to be a wind turbine and the other one wants it to be a nuclear power station, of course they're going to disagree on what features that machine should have. So in the context of society, I think this idea links to another idea called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, the idea is that there are very primal needs that people have, and those are things that are really not optional for humans to exist. We're talking things like breathable air, food, water, maybe shelter, basic human survival needs. But beyond those are more extended survival needs, connections with other human beings, food that's actually nutritious long term, the ability to find a mate so you can produce offspring and the species can survive. These are things that we kind of need, but they're more long term. And as you go up the hierarchy, you get things that are less imminently disastrous to not have, but we still want them. In fact, we actually want them more the higher up the hierarchy we go. They're no longer necessities, they're the things we actually fantasize about having. And I would kind of argue that the lower levels on the pyramid are only there to facilitate you getting to the higher levels of the pyramid. You don't want to breathe. You don't lie awake at night fantasizing about breathing. You breathe so that you can survive long enough so that you can eat, and you like eating. But you breathe and eat and drink and piss and shit and fart all so that you can make money. And you make money so that you can have status, and you have status so that you're attractive, and you're attractive so that you can have a mate. In some sense, the lower tiers serve the higher tiers. When you're taking a shit, you think you're just taking a shit to take a shit, but you're kind of taking a shit so that you can fulfill your deepest desires. Because if you don't take that shit, you'll fucking die before you can do that. That doesn't mean you have to feel indifferent about taking a shit. It could be a really good shit, but the ultimate goal of your life is not to take that shit, or any shit. All the shits that you take are so that you can make it through life long enough to get the thing that you want, the top of the value pyramid. Humans are almost just kind of acting in whatever way they feel optimizes their path towards the top of the value hierarchy. And the thing at the
I don't
top
get
of
the
value
analogy,
pyramid
but I
seems
get
to
the
be
logic.
what people want to optimize society for, which makes sense, right? Why would you optimize it for something that you don't think is the best thing that can possibly happen? Or I guess you could say people want to optimize society to make the path through the hierarchy of needs to the top of it as seamless as possible. Either way though, you end up basically saying that society is about the thing at the top of the pyramid. You believe in things and advocate for things that align with your pyramid, your perceived value of needs as it relates to all of humanity, right? Your value hierarchy. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this.
Your politics bore me.
Alright, thanks. Back to the video. Okay, so society is a system. The intended outcome of the system is whatever we have at the top of the value hierarchy. So the next question is, what determines what we put at the top of the value hierarchy? I would say this is our philosophy. Now, there's lots of different types of philosophies. You can have your philosophy on relationships or your philosophy on business. There's philosophies like Stoicism or whatever that can try and help you have a better life or more success if you presuppose certain other variables about your existence. You know, if you presuppose the end goal is having a great relationship, or if you presuppose that the end goal is having a lot of money, or if you presuppose that the answer is contentment with life, or whatever it is. But if we want to know what is at the top of the value hierarchy, I argue that we can't really presuppose anything. What we need is a type of philosophy that encloses everything else about reality. This is what I would refer to as existential philosophy. The kinds of philosophy that talk about what the fuck even is reality, what are we doing inside of it, and by extension, what the hell are we meant to be doing? Is there even something we're meant to be doing? If not, we can still have pretty hard goals even if we only define them subjectively with relation to the entirety of reality, and we can still establish what that is and then systematize that. And if there is an absolute answer, then there's some objective truth that we ought to be pursuing. These kinds of existential philosophies are what people in practice do actually use to determine what's at the top of their value hierarchy. Your existential model is basically your model of how you think metaphysics works. Metaphysics being the thing that underlies physics and biology and chemistry and neurology and mathematics and everything else that happens in the world. It's the reason why the Big Bang happened. It's the reason reason why atoms exist. It's the reason why 1 + 1 = 2. And this is true whether you're religious or secular. You can think that the Big Bang happened because a creator made it happen, or you can think the Big Bang happened because of some natural process. You can think the laws of physics are perfectly balanced for human existence because there are an infinite number of universes and we just happen to be in this one. You can think that the laws of physics are balanced because we're inside a simulation right now. You can think the laws of physics are balanced because the God that created the universe loves us and made it balanced for us. So your model of metaphysics determines your value hierarchy, and your value hierarchy determines what you want society to look like. For example, you might be religious. If you are, your metaphysical model might be that God created humanity and therefore loves all of humanity, and you want the policy of the nation that you live in to be very altruistic towards all of your geopolitical neighbors. Or alternatively, your metaphysics might be that God has some chosen people or some promised land, and that aggression against neighbors is totally justified to achieve whatever ends need achieving. Oh geez, who could that possibly refer to, you might be thinking, but to be honest, it might actually be easy to list the ones it doesn't refer to. Then again, if you're secular, your metaphysics might be that consciousness exists, and therefore the well-being of those conscious entities is the real thing that matters, and therefore we should try and come up with a system that raises everyone's well-being as high as possible, and then we should aggressively spread that system to all the nations of the planet, which is basically the utopian vision that the communists of the USSR had in mind. But you take out well-being and replace it with freedom, and you end up being something closer to a neoliberal or a neoconservative. Also, if you just look at the cogs within the system itself, you could think, well, communism doesn't work, it always fucks up and explodes, it always ends up being a dictatorship, and then it always collapses, and the economy is basically a cardboard cutout of an economy. Instead, you could think free markets are the closest approximation to some kind of universal system that's good for everybody. That's also one of the routes to get something kind of similar. Anyway, you can see that oftentimes we're not just disagreeing on what the cogs inside of the system should be doing, we're disagreeing on the purpose of the entire system, a lot of the time. And these metaphysical disagreements can have ramifications in ways that seem a lot more specific than these big overarching views that I've just been talking about. Two people who are both secular can have differing opinions on whether animals other than humans are conscious or not, whether fetuses at certain numbers of weeks of development are conscious or not, even, as I've talked about before, whether physical reality really exists in a physical, literal sense. We can disagree about whether there are multiverses or not. We can disagree about whether the universe is eternal or whether it has a beginning and an end. All of these things do actually affect how people perceive our position on this planet. Are we special? Are we not special? Should we exploit the resources of the planet and not care about anything other than us? Or are we custodians that should look after this planet at the expense of ourselves, at the expense of our own economies, at the expense of surrendering geopolitical dominance to another world power that isn't going to do what we're doing? You see what I mean? The result of your metaphysical outlook on how reality works totally determines what you think human society should actually look like. This is why people don't agree on fucking anything ever. How human society in practice actually works largely rests on what our metaphysics looks like. And what makes this even harder is there isn't really an obvious answer, even though everyone thinks that the answer they already have is the obvious one. You can pick almost any religion, and chances are its holy scripture will have a bunch of contradictions in it, or a bunch of things that are factually inaccurate. It will make claims which, from a rational 21st century perspective, seem laughably Bronze Age, unless you are already invested in it being true. You can also pick up any scientific publication and highlight the fact that while they can measure the universe as it exists, they cannot say why it exists, nor even that it exists external of consciousness, or even that other people exist external of consciousness. All I'm saying is that if you have one metaphysical paradigm already and you're looking at another metaphysical paradigm, it's always easy to find some big fault with the other paradigm to justify you not changing your paradigm, your metaphysical model. You get to pat yourself on the back for having the right metaphysical paradigm, and in doing so you get to not seriously consider the fact that you may have the wrong metaphysical paradigm. And people tend to think, particularly in my experience, secular, scientifically minded types of people tend to think that the model they have of how they think metaphysics works is just the default one. It's just the obviously neutral, correct one, which is just self-evident given the reality that they live in. But there actually isn't a default. You can't do empiricism at questions like this. It's fundamentally not going to get you any closer to an answer, presuming that we're talking about like physics experiments and stuff like that. That's just not going to actually help on a very fundamental level, because physics is within the answer. If there is some type of inquiry that we can do to determine what we use physics for, what technology we build with our knowledge, whatever kind of inquiry that is, it won't be doing more and more elaborate physics experiments. That mentality is just an incorrect categorization. Trying to solve epistemic philosophy by doing physics experiments is like trying to put a bigger object inside of a smaller object. I argue that's a categorical error. It just doesn't work. And on close enough analysis, you really can't assume anything about how reality works. Every single model has some kind of circular logic in it, some weird self-referential bullshit, or some infinite regression, something that just falls apart when you really start to think about it. And some of that's unavoidable. It's probably impossible to make make a metaphysical model that doesn't contain any internal contradictions or self-references. Kind of like if you look at a dictionary and try to find the definition of a word, and then try to find the definition of all the words in that definition, and keep doing that, eventually you just go around in a big circle and end up back at the word that you originally started at. But, and here's where the plan for world domination comes in, could you make a new model that is, in and of itself, optimal? Even if every single model on some fundamental level ends up being false or partial in some way or another, could you still make one which is as true as it's possible for a model to be? Maybe even one that fundamentally acknowledges its own partialness but still optimizes around it. That is ultimately what I'm asking. Could it be optimal in terms of minimizing its own self-contradictions? Optimal in terms of not containing any factual inaccuracies regarding what we can empirically observe in the physical world? Optimal in terms of minimizing the amount of existence that will never be understood? And optimal in terms of humans actually wanting it? Its logos, ethos, and pathos being more appealing than any previously existing solution. Hypothetically, if you could basically convert the entire planet, kind of like the Tau from 40k, except hopefully with less mind control. The idea would be to actually be more convincing than every other solution, as well as being truer. I mean, being truer is part of what makes something persuasive, but obviously it's not the full story. You need its logos, ethos, and pathos to all be superior to any other options for it to be universally appealing. The logos, so like the logic, would be stronger. It would make more sense. The ethos would be stronger. It could be vouched for not just by spiritual leaders, but also by scientific ones. And the pathos could be stronger, because if it's completer and makes more logical sense than any other metaphysical model, it also provides a clearer path, better rationale, and more persuasive argument as to what doing the right thing is and how to do it. It also wouldn't be fighting science and technology, so it would be very well equipped to do whatever the things are that it argues are best for us to do. But this is all very hypothetical, and there's also question marks around what this would actually look like. Would this be a book, like some weird combination of a Bible, a philosophical treatise, and a political manifesto? Would it be a literal explanation of what the metaphysics of reality are? Or would it be, like, mythologized? Would you represent concepts with characters and landscapes and mythical events? Stories do tend to resonate strongly with people and get carried through society for a long period of time, but also the true meaning might be lost over time, and also that entire approach might be wrong depending on what humanity does in the future. Maybe we all become cybernetic or virtual organisms 10,000 years from now, and if we want this to persist forever, it's got to have an insane amount of future-proofing built into the structure of it. So how do we balance it being appealing to humans versus being appealing to conscious entities in general, and also continue to do so, not just here and now, but now and forever? The longer you think about this, the weirder it gets, because you could argue that, kind of like mathematics, rather than this being an invention, it would kind of be more like something we're discovering, because if it needs to be true, the truth just is whatever the truth is, right? Ultimately, metaphysics works however metaphysics works. If we did this perfectly, we'd kind of be designing how we're communicating it, but also it's kind of an optimization problem. We're just starting with an idea and then shaving bits off until the natural surface of whatever this thing is gets revealed to us. It ends up being whatever it has to be. I mean, if you think about it, this in and of itself is a system, which is kind of fucky to think about. Anyway, if this is ultimately something that we'd be discovering, it would be monumentally important information that we'd want to preserve basically forever, to the extent that, like, if human beings go extinct, but aliens find the Earth in the future, we'd want to preserve this so that they can find it. That's how important this would be. Which raises the questions about how you would go about doing that, and just how you'd go about communicating it in general. If this is a document, could the average bumblefuck read it and understand the basic gist of what it's telling them to do, but could, like, an intellectual read it and understand not just what it's asking you to do, but also the full complexity of why it's asking you to do it? Can it do both of those things simultaneously? Like, is the solution to Da Vinci Code a bunch of extra layers of information into it that you don't immediately notice, so it doesn't overwhelm the average person that's just trying to extract the immediate crucial information from it? What material do you even write this on? What language do you even write it in? One which everyone can understand? Which fucking language is that? Do you create a language that's optimally easy for people to understand and then put a dictionary of that language at the front of the rest of the treatise so that anyone at any time in history can read the whole thing? Is that part of it? I don't know. Do you even use language? Do you use diagrams and pictures? Do you add deeper layers of meaning with symbolism and metaphors? Or do you explicitly avoid that to ensure that no one ever misunderstands a single word that's on the page? But if you avoid doing that, does it end up being a really boring document that no one ever cares about? Do you create a plain language version, a metaphorical narrative version, a version written solely in logical notation, and a version illustrating everything in diagrams, and have all of them explaining exactly the same thing in parallel with each other, Rosetta Stone style, so that it's very clear that all of them are meant to be saying exactly the same thing on different levels of analysis? How do you actually do this? I regard this as an open question, because I've tried to start writing at least my inept draft version of it, just to see how difficult something like this might be, based on the metaphysics which I think is correct, which I'm not even happy that I've fully fleshed out yet, so I'm fully aware that I'm physically incapable of completing this right now, even if I tried, and even within that scope, I've fucked it up every single time. I've been trying to figure out how to do this for like 10 years, and it's probably going to be at least another 10 before I'm even vaguely satisfied with one particular approach to it. Also, crucially, as I study this kind of stuff more, my understanding of things gets more and more refined, which does very meaningfully affect what I put into it. So really, the figuring out has to come first and the writing has to come afterwards. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? But also, trying to write it down does help me notice the holes that currently exist in what I think. So I think it's a good exercise to do, even though ultimately I've just created and deleted about 50 documents and I essentially have nothing physical to show for it whatsoever. God. I'm hoping I'm doing a decent job of illustrating how goddamn complicated this is. And by the way, I am aware that this sounds, for lack of a better word, kind of culty. That is not lost on me. If you said to me, without context, a guy on the internet is trying to write a manifesto telling people what the ultimate nature of reality is, and openly admits that doing so is going to change people's behavior in meaningful ways, I'd be like, yeah, that's a cult. That sounds like turbo Mormonism or some shit. Creating a cult is not what I'm trying to do, although very...
Let's look at this comment section. Yeah, honestly, I think what he was getting across, I mean, what's the theory? There's higher purposes that we meet with lower actions. You know what I mean? Like, if I want to hit Michigan, no, if I want to smoke some weed, I'm gonna, you know what I mean? I'm gonna do some things that are actions beforehand to smoke that weed. There's a lot that goes into those actions, and I guess what's the theory that people don't like think about those? Like, it gets deeper than that. Like, it gets very deep. Like, I understand that. Like, I guess we could see it on a large scale for sure. Like, even looking at wars, like the setup to the wars. You know what I mean? Like the war in Iran right now. Maybe the setups to that war. You know what I mean? Even going on type shit. You know what I mean? The Epstein files, and then all these other small occurrences that are all underneath even that, and then all these other small occurrences that are even underneath that. You know what I mean? It's like, man, like how he said about the taking the shit thing. Like, I want to feel good right now, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom and take this shit. You know what I mean? No one's goal in life is to take a shit, but you know what I mean? So I can see that where it can get real existential in that sense, where it's like, what is the higher purpose really of any of this? You know, I don't even know if that's what he's trying to say. Maybe some of this is just like going by my head, like woo, like, but like this is what, from what I'm gathering, you know what I mean, and trying to lay down, you know, yeah, I mean, just thinking about those smaller things that get put into, you know, or that lead up into like what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like, what are you trying to do? Yeah, and I guess we all don't really think about that on a day to day. You know what I mean? Like, even with the example I use, like, I want to go smoke some weed. You know, that entails me filling up my car with gas. That entails me, what else? That going to the gas to while at the gas station, going inside to go fucking, you know, communicating with someone that, hey, give me that fucking rap. Give me that rap, nigga. Give me that rap, old bitch. You know what I mean? Give me a blunt rap. You know what I mean? Give me it, and then, you know, rolling it up. You know what I mean? The wrist driving back. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole lot, you know what I mean, that just goes into something small. It's like me wanting to smoke some weed, you know what I mean? It's like 12 different actions, you know what I mean, for something so small. Like, and then that makes you think, right? Is it even worth it? I'm high as fuck right now, but like, you know what I mean? It's like, damn, like all those actions that you have to do, for what cause? For what purpose? To what end? You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we all have to ask ourselves. And once again, I don't know if that's what he is trying to like bring about, but that's kind of what I gathered from it, and that's my take. You know, I think we all need to be more conscious, and maybe that's through meditation, maybe that's through, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because even those beliefs, like he was talking about, get you, you know what I mean, in a system, to where they're, I don't know. There's just a lot to it. Let's go look at another video, man. That one was, this dude was, maybe it was the British accent. I don't know what it was, bro. He was just flying above my head, man. I promise you, I ain't even that high, man. But let's see. Let's find some more shit. I got some right here, right?
There's some sort of
It's a
like Guardian
podcast.
class, like managing reality, spinning reality. They were building flying saucers. Like that is like true.
And let's
Sacred
just do a little
geometry
bit here.
and vision
I don't know how bro
and
shit is for
inspiration
motherfuckers
that you would
reacting,
get from these visions.
but
and that's in another milieu.
hopefully he cool with it.
An
You know what I
example
mean?
of the
I
exact
love
same thing we're
motherfuckers talking
talking about, right? Like these
aliens and
people
shit.
who are
Yes.
involved in making these
I got
breakthrough
paranormal
technologies,
stories myself.
doing
you know what
something
I mean?
that
So,
that like pierces
we'll
the
see what they're
veil
talking
or
about. If we don't
expands the
fuck with
horizon
it,
of
we
what's
can just
possible
keep
through
going to the other
technology
shit.
and this
Yeah.
weird relationship
Trying
we
to
have to
good
outside
introspective
consciousness.
conversation.
But
in
now
the
the whole
AM,
reason
you
I'm
feel
bringing
me?
this up,
Friday in the
I'm starting to
morning,
forget
thank
why I
God
even
it's
brought
Friday,
that up
right?
specifically. But
Right.
broadly, this idea that there could be this existing strain still that remembers remembers how to do that. And I think that could also be the Guardian class, right? Is like the obvious thing is extraterrestrials or some kind of advanced intelligence that's non-physical, that's ultra-terrestrial in the sort of John Keel sort of sense, or maybe ascended master kind of, Helena Blavatsky type early 20th century sense. But another way to think about this Guardian class could be a group of hidden, super advanced human beings. And I'm wondering, in all of the research you've done and all of the thinkers you've come across in this space, is there somebody who thinks about the breakaway civilization in that kind of a way, as like an advanced, ancient, esoteric group of people? Because I want to know who that person is, if there is.
Maybe Jacques Vallée.
Okay.
And the only reason I say maybe is because he doesn't overtly say that. But if you be
as like is there somebody who thinks about the breakaway civilization in that kind of a way, as like an advanced, ancient, esoteric group of people? Because I want to know who that person is, if there is.
maybe Jacques Vallée.
Okay.
And the only reason I say maybe is because he doesn't overtly say that. But if you read like Invisible College, he'll say alien abductions pattern match oddly to, in this very one-to-one way, to ancient mystery rituals.
Yes.
Where there's this sort of priestly elder, and he's like testing you. Maybe you have to drink a drink or something, and you're like, what? Like you're reading that, and then you find out that he's a Rosicrucian.
Yes.
Or whatever. So then it's like the ET thing, a la the like UFOs past, present, and future, which he partook, in 1974.
Yeah.
After the Blue Book cover-up. Is that then this like noble mythology or whatever around like, aliens from another planet or whatever? I don't know. But he would be the closest. I mean, Pasulka also talks about Heidegger's The Question Concerning Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And Heidegger is also this kind of somewhat esoteric, maybe he's esoteric, I don't know, you'll never know or something.
Yeah.
But like he's interested in weird esoteric stuff, and like that essay to me is like unreadable. Like I've tried to read it, and it's like these are the 5 stages of technological manifestation, and it's like impossible to read. But it is weird stuff around sacrifice and
Dude,
rituals
I swear to
and
God, bro,
stuff.
my
and then
crib
you
is
get the
cold
tech,
as
and it's like
hell.
strange, right?
Probably because I'm in it.
So is the alien thing and like the secret space program that Tim Taylor is a part of just like the modern manifestation of that? Like possibly.
Right.
I don't know if there's like one thinker that ties it all together, but Pasulka also hints at it with Encounters, that follow-up book that you read, where she has a friend whose father was in the quote-unquote secret space program, and he would talk at the lunch table with his friends, and they would make jokes, and they would specifically use this one word, simulacra, all the time.
Yeah.
So like that's, as you know, like that's a Platonic, or it's really like, I guess that's a kind of like a Baudrillard, like postmodern You know, maybe that's where it was sort of popularized. But it's a Platonic idea, you know, at its core, and so that would also, you know, comport with maybe there is some mythological shading going on at these kind of like elite class levels. Not even class, like it's probably really simplistic to say it's like cut by socioeconomic, you know, it's just the Gilded Age families or something. Like that's kind of ridiculous, right? But like there's some sort of like guardian class, like managing reality, spinning reality. You know, Ingo Swann talks about he says, are there, you know, there's spin doctors on, like, you know, in any news that you read or whatever, which is probably true. And he's like, are there reality spin doctors, you know? And then you get into the parapsychology stuff, and I think there are, you know, plenty of proponents of like, oh, there's like a mental connection with reality. You know, the materialist reductionist divide is like not correct. But then if you actually take that to its logical conclusion, very few people extrapolate out like how a society would function in the world where A, that's not only true, but B, it's true in a way that's exploitable. That's not like sort of like the consciousness thing is not just like this weak interaction that like everybody has like in the same way. Like, what if there are people who are like better at that thing, at the skill of like literally take like a random event generator and like, you know, a random quantum mechanical process. Like somebody has like a more of an effect on that. Then you get into like, you know, we were talking about like mesmerism or whatever, and you get into like weird like control systems and secret societies, and like that all sounds insane, right? And you're talking about it just now with like the, you know, these like hermetic, you know, groups that have like maybe had disproportionate influence across, you know, many era, that like Manly P. Hall and others like that write about.
The Great White Brotherhood, and like there's this idea, you know how there's that idea of the Maitreya Buddha, where it's like, it's essentially like the next Buddha will come essentially when all wisdom of the previous Buddha goes away.
Whoa.
And there's a very similar
That's JJK. That's Jujutsu Kaisen shit. That's
like
modulo.
Wisdom or Hermes or this brotherhood will emerge again at some point, right, where they're badly needed, or something, right? Or maybe there's just some other kind of catalytic event that needs to occur. And is that real? I have no idea. It's probably wishful thinking, but it's an idea that perks up my wonder whiskers for sure. But we glanced like right past him. But one of the things I did want to riff on specifically more was Parsons.
Yeah.
Because Parsons is such a rare manifestation of exactly what we're talking about. Not just like, hey, this person's into some really philosophical ideas that have a lot to do with what we're talking about, but this is someone who is actually doing active occult work to try to bring about some sort of change within the fabric of reality. And in his mind, at least, he's equating the rocket era with that as well. So there was no divide in this man's mind, who's one of the fathers of rocketry, if not the father of rocketry, who's doing, like you said, he's part of the OTO. He's doing rituals to bring about do the Babylon working or whatever, and bring about the Moonchild. That is like from my understanding, it's a distillation of the goddess or some specific goddess, and in doing that, that would somehow be this catalytic moment of this new era being born. And not only is he doing this stuff, doing, you know, sex magic rituals and blowing up, you know, proto rockets, he's doing things that are freaking out Aleister Crowley. Like Crowley is writing him letters, essentially, from my understanding, being like, what the hell are you doing? Like what you're doing is dangerous, and you don't understand what you're doing. Essentially, is
Crowley writing letters.
My memory of it.
Aleister Crowley writing the nigga letters.
Crazy microcosm of this idea of somebody understanding that there are unseen forces at work here, and what we do here is some kind of strange manifestation of something else, somewhere else, in some unseen layer of reality.
Yeah, he's a great example because he's like an industrialist who you can't really argue with his contributions. You could say people at JPL like later, you know, systematized what he built or whatever. But I mean, I think it's like a running joke there. They called it Jack Parsons Lab, JPL. And you know, he's
it's like
he definitely
Again,
was doing the early
2-hour
experimentation that
conversation.
you can't really argue with. You can always
I
say
don't have
with these
2-hour
people
conversations,
that,
but
you know, the craziness,
try
the
to find
crazy
some shit that's
worldview is
like
this sort of
20
like
minutes.
incidental byproduct of
20
you
minutes.
know, somebody who
clips.
is willing
Clips.
to, you know, push past the normal boundaries.
The Epstein of England. Didn't they arrest his ass, the prince? I'm sure there's a bunch of them, though. Real talk. Real fucking talk. Take down the whole royal family while you're at it, right?
This is the disturbing story of Jimmy Savile and the conspiracy of silence that protected him for half
Gotta
a
do
century.
the
In many
Canadian
ways,
Epstein
this story
as well.
serves as a
Peter
chilling
Nygaard.
precursor to the Epstein files. Basically, a case study on how power, institutional protection, and willful blindness can shield a monster in plain sight for generations. This one is a little bit morbid, so have some discretion while you're watching it. Anyway, sit back, relax, and welcome to camp. What's up, people, and welcome back to camp. My name is Mark Gagnon, and thank you for joining me in my tent where every single week we explore the most interesting, fascinating, controversial stories from around the world from all time forever. Yes, that is what we do here in the campsite. I'm trying to get to the bottom of everything that's ever happened. I'm trying to learn all the history and know all the things. That is my attempt here at the campsite. But and today's no different, guys. We have a fascinating and morbid episode in lieu of doing a lot of coverage and content sort of around the Epstein files and just how it's kind of changed people's perception of power and institutions in the United States and how all of this stuff really operates. I've gotten a lot of people asking if we can do a deep dive on this guy, Jimmy Savile, and just how disturbing and gross his entire career was and how he was protected by the highest rungs of power everywhere he went, basically, but specifically in England. Now, before we jump in, I just want to say thank you guys so much for making this show possible and just supporting us through this time. You guys are truly the best, and every time you click a video, every time you like and comment, you are making my dreams come true. And it's truly the greatest thing ever. And I also have great news. If you are interested in getting a little bit closer to the fire and gathering around the campsite, we have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/campgagnon. That is where basically me and everyone like you basically get together and we chop it up. We get into all the most interesting stuff. There's, you know, combos, chat rooms, and we're all just kind of hanging out. We also do bonus content. We do Zooms every month, extra episodes, ad-free episodes, merch discounts, all that stuff. And it's about the cost of like a cup of coffee every month. That's it. So you can check it out, patreon.com/campgagnon. And also I want to give a shout out to Christos. None of this is possible without this guy, all right? He's the big Greek in the sky, you know? That's the way I look at him. He's like Zeus. Zeus is Greek, right?
Sure.
All right, Christos, I'm sorry. We don't have time for you to do a whole diatribe, but today we're talking about the disgusting and morbid Jimmy Savile. Now, in order to understand who this guy is and how he was able to ascertain so much power and ultimately exploit it for his own disgusting predilections, you kind of need to go all the way to the beginning, to a working class Catholic household in Leeds, England, where James Wilson Vincent Savile was born on October 31st, 1926. Yes, Halloween. And looking back, the symbolism feels almost too on the nose, right? Too perfect. Like the universe was trying to warn us that this guy was messed up before he even got here. Jimmy was the youngest of 7 children. By all accounts, his childhood was defined by 2 things: poverty and his mother. Agnes Savile, or the Duchess as Jimmy would call her for the rest of his life, was the center of his universe in a way that was a little too intimate in a way. It went way beyond the normal maternal attachment. In short, Jimmy worshipped her. He was obsessed with her, and when she died in 1972, he actually kept her body in her home for 5 days before allowing her to be buried. He preserved her clothes, her bedroom, everything exactly as she left it. He would visit the room regularly, sitting with her belongings, talking to her as if she were still there. He actually once told an interviewer with complete sincerity that the best years of his life were the 5 days that he spent alone with his mother's body. I mean, just let that image sit with you for a moment, because this is a man that Britain would soon invite into their living rooms and their children's lives, hospitals, be knighted. Like, I mean, he climbed to the highest ranks of British culture, and here he is talking with a journalist, being like, "Yeah, I loved it when me and my mum was just sitting there and she was all dead like." I mean, it's like crazy that this ever happened, but I guess it was a different time. I guess it wasn't even a different time. I mean, Epstein was running around up until 2019, so. Now, during World War II, young Jimmy worked as a coal miner, a protected occupation that kept him out of military service. But it was in the mines that he suffered a spinal injury, which gave him this sort of signature hunched posture and like slightly unsettling kind of gait that later became a part of his eccentric persona. But the mines also gave him something different. It was his first taste of operating outside the rules. You see, after the war ended, Saville didn't return to real work. Instead, he became a scrap metal dealer, which in post-war Britain was kind of just a euphemism for someone just like doing black market trading. He learned like how to hustle and how to charm and how to kind of live in like the gray areas where rules don't really apply and you take a lot of risk, but you can also, you know, make a lot of money. And then came the dance halls. So by the late 1940s, Saville started running unlicensed nightclubs in his hometown of Leeds and in Manchester as well. These were basically underground dance halls where Saville served as a manager and a DJ, and he was, by many accounts, one of the first DJs in Britain to actually use two turntables simultaneously, literally pioneering techniques that would later become standard in the industry, you know? He was just like a little hunchback, just like scratching on the ones and twos. He was charismatic, you know, he was innovative, and people just generally kind of liked him. And even then, rumors of abuse had actually started to circulate. Right around this time, former employees and attendees at these dance halls would later testify that Saville was assaulting young women at these events, using his position of power and his access to private areas and back rooms to basically prey on girls who had just come to these events to, you know, have a good time. And this is a pattern that would define his life, and it was already starting to take shape, right? You create something interesting that people want to go to, and you start to create a crowd, then you charm the crowd, then you cultivate an image, and, you know, an image of fun and excitement, something interesting, and use that basically as cover to carry out something much darker and much more sinister. And he got away with it repeatedly. And this was one of the first times that he really saw that. And by the early 1960s, Saville had transitioned from a club DJ to a radio personality, landing a gig with Radio Luxembourg before eventually moving to the BBC. And the timing was perfect. Britain was on the cusp of a cultural revolution. The Beatles were about to explode. Youth culture was becoming like a real market force around the world, but specifically in Britain. And the BBC needed someone who could connect with the younger generation. Jimmy Saville, with his bleached blonde hair and tracksuits and cigars and all these incomprehensible catchphrases like now then, and how's about that then, fit the bill perfectly. He wasn't polished by any stretch, and he wasn't handsome, but he was weird and different and was strange in the exact way that the moment of the 60s had basically called for. So in 1964, Saville had become the host of Top the Pops, one of the most influential music programs in British television history. Like, I don't even really, it's like MTV before MTV is one way to think of it. Like, I don't even know, TRL maybe. It was just the go-to spot for music in the 60s. And suddenly, he wasn't just a regional DJ with a following. He was a national figure, beamed into millions of homes every single week, surrounded by the youngest, most infamous pop stars of the day and the even younger fan base that would follow them around. And the access that this gave him was unprecedented. Teenagers would line up to be in the studio, and young performers would seek his approval. And behind the scenes, away from the cameras, Saville was building something completely different, something that he started back in the underground nightclubs. And this was a hidden infrastructure of abuse that would span decades. What's up, people? We're going to take a break really quick because I got to give a shout out to the good folks at Dylan Optics. I mean, for the longest time, optics.com.
Ain't sponsoring your boy.
They
ain't giving me a cut.
And if you was constructed, because it wasn't random. It wasn't opportunistic in the way that most predators operate either. Jimmy Saville built a system, this engineered, architectured access that basically gave him unsupervised contact with the most vulnerable people in his industry. And he did it basically in plain sight with the full cooperation of the institutions that should have been protecting them. And this is maybe the most disturbing part. It started with charities. Beginning in the 1960s and accelerating through the 70s and the 80s, Saville expanded his persona from entertainer to being a philanthropist. He ran marathons, he organized fundraisers, he
raised tens of millions of pounds for hospitals and schools and, you know, kids organizations. And in return for his generosity, he basically just asked for one thing. He just wanted access. As a matter of fact, Stoke Mandeville Hospital became his primary base of operations. This was a renowned spinal injury center, a place where some of the most vulnerable patients in the country, people who were paralyzed, they maybe couldn't move at all, many of them were children, and they came here for treatment. Saville's charity work had raised so much money for the hospital that they gave him his own bedroom on the grounds. I mean, think, like, not a visitor's room, not a hotel nearby, a bedroom inside the hospital where he could come and go as he pleased at any hour of the day or night. I mean, is that not the like, how weird is that? This is a television personality with no medical training, no official role, no accountability, doesn't know anything about medicine, and he's given a bedroom inside a hospital full of immobilized patients. And this wasn't like medieval times, this was in the 60s. And he used it exactly as you would expect a predator to use it. But Stoke Mandeville was just the beginning. He moved on to Broadmoor Hospital, and Broadmoor was and remains one of the highest security psychiatric facilities in all of Britain. This is where they send people that have been convicted of the most serious crimes but are deemed, you know, clinically insane for a regular prison. They can't actually go to jail because they're so crazy. I mean, we're talking like violent offenders, serial killers, the most dangerous psychiatric patients in the entire country. And the administrators of Broadmoor, impressed by Saville's charity work and his celebrity status, his connections, the people he knew, they gave him an official role on their board and, once again, his own set of keys to the facility. Is this not crazy to anyone else? Like, how is this ever a thing? His own keys to a high-security psychiatric hospital where he could just walk around the halls at night, unsupervised, among patients who are literally medicated and traumatized and mentally unwell, to that no one would even believe anything that happened to them. Like, this is literally the most vulnerable aspects of our society, and he just had a key to just wander around. Leeds General Infirmary would give him a similar deal, and so did a bunch of other hospitals across England. It's so bizarre. At its peak, Saville had what amounted
so fucking
basically free reign of more than 28 different institutional settings. I mean, schools, children's homes, hospitals, detention centers. He would basically just like show up unannounced, and he would visit patients alone, and he would volunteer for tasks that, you know, gave him physical access to vulnerable people. And because he was Jimmy Savile, you know, because he was a celebrity, he was this famous DJ, and he was hanging with all the coolest people and pop stars, and he raised so much money. There's no way this could be a bad guy, right? No one even questioned it. And then there's the morgues. I mean, this is the craziest thing. Like, multiple sources testify that Saville had a particular interest in hospital morgues. I mean, remember the stuff he was doing with his mom, just dead in her room, right? Like, this is the guy that's severely disturbed. So, he had this weird interest with these morgues, and he would basically visit them during his nighttime wanderings, and he basically had access to the bodies of recently deceased people. And when these allegations first started to surface after his death fairly recently, they seemed almost too grotesque to actually be believed. Surely this is speculation. Surely this is people projecting the worst possible crimes on a man who was, you know, revealed as a monster. Right? There's no way. But official investigations actually confirmed it. Saville had indeed spent unsupervised time in morgues. A lot of it. And what exactly he did will probably never be known. I mean, he's gone. He can never really testify. But the testimony is consistent enough and disturbing enough that it can't just be dismissed. Every charity event, every hospital, every photo opportunity with a young patient, it was all part of the institutional architecture of abuse. The institutions basically let him build it piece by piece because he brought them money or publicity, and, you know, because questioning him or challenging him might bring consequences. If, you know, like, what if they go against him and they all of a sudden stop getting funding, or he tells people to, you know, stop supporting them. This guy is so connected that he's able to use his power to exploit the most vulnerable populations in these institutions. Now, if Jimmy Savile had been some shadowy figure operating in secret, his decades of abuse might be easier to comprehend, right? It's like, oh, this is like a fringe doctor that no one knows about. But that's not what happened. The evidence was kind of all there, mountains of it, accumulating year after year, you know, person after person looking at the evidence and kind of doing nothing. The first documented complaints to the BBC came in 1964. Now keep in mind, a lot of these allegations, almost all of them, came out after Savile's death, like post 2010. And the first one came in 1964. Now this is the same year that Savile began hosting Top of the Pops, that, very popular music program. Girls who had attended tapings reported inappropriate behavior. These complaints basically went nowhere, no investigation, no consequences, and the show just went on, and so did Savile. And you gotta think, like, this is the 60s, okay? This was a different standard for how men and women operated, Like, I think open flirting was, like, pretty generally accepted. So for women to complain about inappropriate behavior in the 60s, this guy must have been doing some real weird stuff. And the fact that it was completely dismissed is truly crazy. Now, throughout the 60s and 70s, rumors about Savile circulated widely within the entertainment industry. Comedians were actually even making jokes about it. Other TV personalities would, like, kind of whisper warnings that actually the phrase, "Jim will fix it," the name of his beloved children's show where he actually made kids' dreams come true. This was an actual show that he had. This is crazy. But regardless, this became, like, industry slang. Like, this was like a euphemism that everyone kind of understood but no one really talked about. John Lydon, the former frontman of the Sex Pistols, mentioned in a 1978 BBC interview that everyone knew about Savile and what he was doing, but the interview was just never broadcast, and the BBC just shelved it. In 1973, journalists at the Daily Mail attempted to investigate Savile. They gathered testimony, they compiled evidence, and then the story just went nowhere. Officially, there wasn't enough proof. Unofficially, Savile was too powerful, too connected, too valuable to the institutions that benefited from his money and from his influence. I mean, it's really the same thing with the Epstein story. I remember the journalist in 2003 that was like, we have the whole story, we had everything, and the editor canned it. They said, hey, we're not going to put the story out. It's like they had all the stuff, and then it went nowhere. I mean, think about how many innocent people could have been spared. Like, how many victims and survivors wouldn't have undergone this type of trauma if they actually did their due diligence when it happened. It's not like this person was some criminal mastermind no one knew about. There were multiple credible complaints. I mean, journalists and interviewers and researchers are bringing up evidence through the 60s and 70s. I mean, it's crazy. Now, even the police received complaints multiple times over the decades, like the official police. In 2007, Surrey police conducted an investigation based on multiple allegations of this history of abuse. They passed their findings to the Crown Prosecution Service, who reviewed the evidence and conveniently concluded that there was insufficient evidence to prosecute. Savile was in his 80s by then and was still in many ways a beloved national figure and still made public appearances and was still largely untouchable. And then there was Newsnight. In late 2011, just weeks after Savile's death, the BBC flagship investigative journalism program was preparing an expose. They had victims willing to speak on camera, they had evidence, they had a story that would have revealed the truth about one of the BBC's most famous faces, and BBC executives just stopped it. They literally just pulled the segment. They claimed that it didn't meet editorial standards, that there were concerns about the evidence, that the timing just wasn't right. The timing. Jimmy Savile's already dead, but the countless people that he had abused were still alive and still awaiting justice that really would never come. I mean, what timing are they possibly talking about? It's crazy. The real answer, of course, is that the BBC was about to air tribute programs celebrating Savile's life and his legacy, and of course his relationship with the BBC. An expose would have interfered with all of that. So the victims were conveniently silenced once again, and the tributes aired, and Britain mourned a man who spent the better part of 60 years abusing children in the very institutions that were now honoring his memory. And when the truth finally came out, when ITV aired its own documentary in 2012, when Operation U-Tree was launched, when victim after victim after victim finally came forward, the scale of what had been ignored became impossible to deny. Over 500 victims were identified. The abuse spanned 6 decades. It occurred in the BBC studios, in hospitals, in children's homes, in his caravan, in his car.
Bro, this is just sad, bro. I've listened to 20 minutes of this nigga just fucking dead people, having the keys to all the hospitals to fuck retarded people, fucking chilling with all the kids who want to be young music artists, fucking them too. Like, bro, this is just sad, bro. Like, Ain't no theory to it. Ain't nothing to guess. Ain't no fun to it. That shit's just fucked. That shit's just fucked. Real life Epstein nigga right there. Do we wanna watch that? Do I wanna watch that? I don't know. I like shit with some mystery behind it. With some like, you feels me. The bottom of the rabbit hole. No. I wonder if there's any rabbit holes out there in the past that had like Epstein on it, like back in the day. Like that would have been crazy if there's like we gotta find that. That'd be next level Nostradamus maxing. Yeah, chat, we're just truth maxing right now. He faked a live stream to murder. So we're gonna watch Asmongold react to a video.
This dude going to jail
We're
for a long
we're
time.
reacting to a reaction.
This YouTuber told everyone he was live streaming a game, but prosecutors say that was all an
Oh,
alibi, and he
we're
was lying.
reacting
So they gave
to
him
a
life in
reaction.
prison.
That's
So
a
safe to say we
reaction.
have quite the insane story today.
love
So
it.
this guy thought he
Oh,
figured it out, I
that's
guess.
bad.
I mean,
At least
he
we got
really
Pokemon
thought
on
he was
screen.
smarter than everyone else. Because on the night of December 18th, 2022,
I don't
there's
see
a
no one with
full
Pokemon on the
6-hour
screen,
YouTube
do you?
live stream
Wow.
of him
Ain't no one got
sitting at
Pokemon
home,
on the
playing
screen.
Grand Theft Auto while drinking and
Uh-huh.
joking around. At one point, he even tells viewers, "I'm not leaving the house tonight." And
He's
somehow,
not leaving the house tonight. Okay.
now, that was supposed to be his airtight alibi, except prosecutors say that the same night, during the exact same stream, he was miles away committing the attack that would later lead to his conviction. And now, after a full trial, a jury has looked into all of it and decided his alibi was a complete lie. So, Stephen McCullough, also known online as VoteSaxon07, has been found guilty in Belfast Crown Court. And when the
got it.
verdict was read, people cheered. Some were crying, and it was one of those moments where you could actually feel how long all this has been building. Because this
I caught
case
him.
was just so unbelievably strange, and it was all backed by such a reckless plan. But I guess to understand why this hit so hard, you kind of have to understand what this was all about. So, Natalie McNally, she was 32 years old. She was about 15 weeks pregnant. And everything about her
Oh
life
my
to that point
God.
suggested that she was moving forward. This was
What
the
a
kind of
freak.
situation where she was close to her family, her parents, her brothers. This is the kind of situation where a new baby is super exciting for everyone in the family.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
there was a future being built here.
Right.
And Steven was supposed to be a part of that picture. But the two had
What
met just
happened?
months earlier. And things moved quickly, and when she told him that she was pregnant, the messages shown in court made it seem like he was on board. As he was calling the baby Little Squish. So I guess on the surface,
Little squish? Oh my, what the fuck?
it looked somewhat normal,
What the
but then
fuck?
comes December 18th, which was a
Wait,
Sunday
what?
night about a week before Christmas. Natalie's at home, and
Uh-huh.
earlier that day, she'd even liked to post promoting Steven's stream, which was about a 6-hour
Sure.
session that started at 6 p.m. Just
That's
a
nice.
normal live stream, except it wasn't. Because between 8:50 and 9:30 p.m., something happened inside that house that would later be described in court as a planned, calculated, and premeditated attack. And while all this is happening,
Man.
his YouTube channel was still live. He posted pretty often, stuff like
Yeah.
gaming and Doctor Who content.
10
of all
years
things.
ago.
And if you actually watch parts of that stream, it almost feels surreal. So he's sitting there in a Santa hat, talking to viewers, pouring himself drinks, playing GTA like nothing in the world is happening.
Yeah,
And then
sure.
there's the part that just hits a little bit different. He says it's going to be a really good Christmas this year. You know, no,
It's gonna be a wait. So he streams an entire pre-recorded stream where he says it's gonna be a really good Christmas this year, and then he goes out to murder somebody while the stream. Oh my god!
knowing that he pre-recorded
The
this to
fuck?
go do what he was about to
Who's
do.
this
The
guy?
next morning, Natalie is found.
Yeah.
Steven is the one who calls it in, and he presents himself as the grieving boyfriend. And I hate to say it, but for a moment, it actually worked. Because
Yeah.
when police look at him, there's this 6-hour video sitting right there.
Yeah, he was
a
there.
full timeline at his home,
Mhm.
but that's where things start getting really weird.
So how'd they
It does
find out it
seem a
wasn't
little
him?
bit too convenient. Like, the pregnant woman is just attacking
Yeah.
her home, and her boyfriend just happens to have a full 6-hour video of himself online at the exact time. Like, it would make more
Well, I
sense
don't
if
think that'd be that crazy if the guy streams every day, but yeah.
he was one of those daily streamers, but
Yeah.
if he just streamed here and there, I don't know. It's hard to really know because his page has been nuked on YouTube, so
Ooh,
yeah.
I wonder
There were
why.
posts going around breaking down the timeline, trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
People pointed out how earlier that same day, Natalie had interacted with a post promoting the stream, but the more you looked, the more things just didn't really sit right. So for starters, the way the stream was set up, right at the beginning, he tells viewers there's a technical issue and that he won't be interacting with the chat. So chat amongst yourselves, he said.
How convenient.
Because this streaming software is kind of up the
Yeah.
left, it means I can't check the live chat, which is a real shame. So, by all means, talk amongst
of
yourselves.
course.
I could use my phone to dip in every now
Yeah.
and again and check it, but phone's away, can't look at the live chat for some bloody reason, because if I do, it makes the whole thing freeze and OBS just screws up.
I guess you can say that's the
Yeah.
first red flag, because if you've ever watched a live stream, you already know. I mean,
you know he's gonna respond to chat.
interaction happens, especially on like a sit-down
Yeah.
gaming stream with not like a whole bunch of viewers. Like for example, I stream here on this channel, and I do interact a little bit with chat, but
Not all
for the
the
most
time,
part,
yeah.
when I live stream, I kind of live stream like I'm recording a video. So I just like
course.
start the stream, and then I just
almost
report
like
or
it's
view the whole
intentional.
video,
Yeah.
but I do it live. So in those streams, because they're way shorter than like a 6-hour stream, I don't interact with chat too much. I do talk to it a little bit though. But here, in 6 hours, he didn't interact a single time with chat, which is crazy. Especially
Man.
with the whole point of that kind of stream is, you know, to be an interactive live stream, not
Exactly.
to be a VOD. I guess for him it was meant to be a VOD though, because
Yeah, for him it was a little bit different.
you know, it was his alibi.
Yeah.
I digress. But he then also had moments in his stream that, looking back now, are just very unsettling.
Like, I was reading somewhere recently, like, the amount of police force that we have lost over the last 12 years is just frightening, and no wonder crime is on the rise. That's why I like sticking to just doing crimes in a video game, because I'm a bit of a sadistic, I suppose. But then again, crimes in a video game, because I'm a bit of a sadistic, I suppose. But then again, it is a video game, you know. So like, it's got real world consequences, so who gives a I need to kill this. I need to take her down. Attack, panic, attack. That's what we're doing.
Dude, who just starts saying that? What, more it was obvious, it was. Yeah, oh my god. Can you imagine, like, one of the good things about us being a police officer is most of the people that you go after to capture are just so stupid, they just self-report themselves. It's like, you ever seen, like, those videos where a guy just holds out a net and then a fish jumps out of the water and then just jumps in the net? I feel like there's a lot of times probably police officers have that happen. It's like, well, how'd you know I shot her if I hid the gun? In the toilet. Go check the toilet. Was there a gun in there? Yeah. Got him. You know,
And
like,
later he tries to balance that out
just
by
switch
saying,
off.
in real life, I'm an absolute sweetheart.
Yeah,
Apparently
cops
not.
recommend-
It
yeah.
feels like a joke if it wasn't for the fact that this evil human being stole a pregnant woman's life.
Ugh.
Like, even small details fell off. Like, his phone was completely inactive during the exact
Yeah,
window of
sure.
the attack. Then suddenly his phone was active again right when the stream ends.
Wow.
Super convenient. I guess his explanation was that he'd been drinking and was basically just passed out. And for a while, that's where the case
Yeah, sure.
sat. He was arrested.
So
then he
how'd
was
they figure it
released,
out?
His status was downgraded, and other people were questioned. And police even appealed to the public for information, offering a reward, which kind of tells you everything, because I feel like you don't really do that if you're confident you have your guy. Meanwhile, during this time, he's still around and close to the family, and that is just next level messed up. Prosecutors later said the family
Jeez.
literally bring him in, they console him, and they support him. So,
Oh my god, bro, what a sicko. Holy shit. I didn't even know about this. I don't know how I missed this when it happened. I've been a bounty hunter. I was a bounty hunter for almost a decade. So many people posted their exact location and all their future plans over social media. Yeah, it's like, the thing is that a lot of the people that do crimes are just really dumb. They're really dumb, and so it's easy to get them.
to number one, do that to begin with, and then number two, still console and be there for
Yeah.
the family. Like, it's just,
Oh,
there's
wow.
so many layers
sick.
of how messed
I'm
up this
so
is.
sick.
But thankfully, when you upload videos, there's metadata and timestamps and file history and
Oh,
encoding
no.
details. So I guess when the cybercrime
Oh,
unit
boy.
started
Here we
digging
go.
into that live stream, they found that video wasn't live at all. That video was actually recorded days earlier on December 14th. It was saved as a file, then uploaded and played back later to look like it was happening in real time, which means that entire 6-hour alibi was fake. And once you know that, everything about this weird stream suddenly makes way more sense. So, in court, prosecutor Charles McCraner, he said his claims that between 6 p.m. and midnight that he was going live was complete fabrication. And at that point, the entire case flips, because when you need a fake alibi, chances are you probably were doing something that you weren't supposed to do. So police bring him back in, and at first, he tries to hold on to it, even after being confronted with the evidence. He reportedly says that it's literally impossible the stream wasn't live, which at that point just sounds like desperation, because he just doesn't want to accept the fact that he did what he did. And
See,
now,
what he should have done is he should have just 100% said it was live, 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 and never give up on that. Never give up on it, and just hope that you can get enough people in the jury that are so stupid, and the people prosecuting you will be so dumb they won't be able to understand the nuances of playing a video. Like, yes, that he did that, apparently not.
he's going to get the consequences for doing what he did. But also, I mean, if he went and did that because he got a girl pregnant, clearly he doesn't even own his own actions. He is literally just a man-child, which makes
pregnant.
it so
He did
depressing.
that?
Because I mean, dude essentially got something that so many people dream of, and decided to just
He must have
destroy
hated that
3
bitch.
lives just like that. It's sad. It's
Well, the thing is that you have to keep in mind that the people that think like this are like functional animals. You can't look at them from the perspective of like the way that you look at yourself making a decision, or you look at somebody else making a decision. These people are just retarded. Like, they're just totally retarded. And you can't go and Zach isn't live right now. He's murdering someone to Taco Bell. Yes, clearly. And so, like, this is it. Like, people make these decisions and they do this all the time. This is just stupid.
so sad. Honestly, way more lives, because he also, you know, ruined the life of her family and his family, because now his family has to live with the fact that they raised a monster, and now her family doesn't have her anymore. This is so tragic. So, I mean, honestly, it's not surprising that he was already caught and he's still trying to argue his way out of it. Like, he's pathetic. So, I mean, they show him the timestamps, and he's just like, no, that's impossible, I was live. And at that point, give it up, dude. But eventually, the story does change, and in a prepared statement, he admits that the stream was pre-recorded.
Why
But
would
instead
you
of
do
explaining
that?
why, he just pivots, and he says that he was home drinking and asleep for most of the night. But he still claims that he never left the house. And prosecutors were not buying that for a second. And now, with the alibi gone, investigators start actually rebuilding what they thought would have happened that night.
What an
So prosecutors showed that in days leading up to December 18th, he had been searching transport routes, which included bus times, train schedules, and specific routes between Lisburn and Lurgan. And the
Wait,
same
so he didn't even have a car?
routes would later show up in CCTV. So, on the night itself, they say that he leaves the home while that pre-recorded stream is playing in a freaking disguise. Are you joking?
A
Bro
disguise?
left his house with one of those, like, the glasses with a mustache on. Regardless, he had his face covered, hood up, carrying a bag, and he was wearing gloves. And at one
Oh my god, bro, like, brought to you by Hollywood Movies. What an idiot.
point, the person removes a black glove, and underneath it, a yellow glove. I'm kind of surprised that he thought he could outsmart everyone and do this, but the footage
Stupid people often think that they're not stupid. It's actually quite common.
continues, and the same figure is seen arriving in Lurgan, walking through the town, and heading to the direction of Natalie's home. And at one point, prosecutors say he even changes his appearance again, switching clothing near her neighborhood. And as angry as this makes me, it's kind of nice to know that he just wanted to get away with it so badly, and he failed this miserably. Like, he tried to be
he's stupid. The thing is that, like, I mean, they're just stupid. So it's easy, like, the thing is, if you're an investigator, most of the people that are investigators are pretty smart, right? You're going to catch these guys every single time. You are. Every single time you're going to get them. Because they're dumb. That's it.
some, like, giga brain dude and figure out how to get away with all this, but no, he's just a complete moron. It's like,
Of
wow,
course.
congratulations, dude. Enjoy your life in a cell for the rest of your
Ooh.
life. But after
Thank
everything
God.
happens, there's more footage, and you see the person leaving the area, getting into a taxi, and heading back to his home. So
Why
just
would you
days-
get an attack? What an idiot. They're so
after everything
stupid.
happened,
How can
he
you be
attends
so
the wake
dumb?
at Natalie's family's home. And this part is honestly kind of hard to wrap your head around because
Okay.
according to prosecutors, the family welcomed him in. And at one point, he goes back to the family's home again and spends time there. And then he leaves. And then about 40 minutes later, he comes back. And apparently the reason he came back was he said he forgot his phone, which, you know, that happens. People forget things.
Yeah.
But the problem is, he'd been recording on that phone the entire time. Investigators later believe that he left it there on purpose to capture what the family was saying after he left. And I guess
that's probably smart. That's smart for him to do that. That way he could see whether they were on to him or not. That's actually kind of smart.
he did this because he was trying to find out if they suspected him of, you know, doing it. You know what a life hack is
smart.
to, you know, not have to worry about those things? Just
kill
don't do
people.
that.
Don't
if you
kill
don't
people.
end someone's life, you don't have to
kill
worry
people.
about
Exactly.
if people
Yes.
think you ended
Yes.
someone's life or not. It's pretty simple. But at the end of everything, the jury goes out to deliberate, and it
Right.
doesn't take long, only about 2 hours. And the verdict comes back as guilty, and the room erupts. People
Ooh.
were celebrating so much, the judge had
Ooh.
to step in for the proceedings to actually go on.
Ooh.
McCallum shows no reaction, and the defense suggested during
Got
the
him.
trial that someone else had done it. And I guess he just maintained that he didn't do it, regardless
Yeah.
if there's so much information that makes it seem like he did so. But at the end of the day, I mean, the jury didn't buy it, and he's now
Nobody
been
did.
handed a life
What an
sentence
idiot.
with a minimum term to be set later. So yeah, this
Damn.
is just an awful alibi
Damn.
planned out by a complete moron. And now his reward for all this is spending the rest of his life in prison. So
Well, he's getting
well
content
played.
out of it.
Complete skill issue, dude. Maybe
That's
you
what
should go
matters.
end people's life.
Yep.
Sorry for the sad story. It was just such an insane thing. I felt like I wanted to cover it. Regardless, thank you guys for the support.
Don't kill people, chat. Woo! Yeah, I've been fucking with Top Option. I ain't gonna lie to you. I've been bumping him in my own time. Do we have any viewers? Do we have any viewers? Gang gang. Gang gang. I turned up the volume. Is it too loud? I turned up the volume. Is it too loud? I turned up the volume. It shouldn't be. It should be good. Good? It shouldn't. It should be good. Good? Smoke a wood and steal people's beats online. Smoke a wood and steal people's beats online. Free for profit, of course. Gonna wash the woody. Ha ha. Ha ha. Y'all hear me better? Do you? Do you? Y'all hear me better? Do you? Do you? Deceased. What's happening on the kick? What's happening on the kick? Hell yeah. Or do you not think so far? Cause I've been thinking about forever.
Oh.
Alright, we're gonna get back on live in a bit. Love ya.